Hello, my name is Meera Bhatt, and I'm a junior at Montgomery High School in New Jersey. Welcome back to the interview series on colleges and careers, where I talk to established professionals from a wide range of careers to learn and gain a well-rounded understanding about different careers and different pathways to success. Today, I'm super excited to be speaking with Mr. Bob Miglani, a global thought leader, best-selling author of 3 books, a 23-year Ex-Pfizer executive, keynote speaker, advisor to CEOs and leaders, and founder and CEO of Embrace the Chaos. He earned his undergraduate degree in business from Rider University and MBA from Pace University. Welcome, Mr. Miglani. Can't wait to hear from you. All right, Mr. Miglani. So would you be able to please give me a brief overview of your career and where you are today?
Sure, Meera. First of all, you have to call me Bob. Okay, thank you very much. So, Meera, my name is Bob Miglani. My career in the past, or what I'm doing now? What do you want?
Kind of maybe from the beginning to where you are, just a brief summary.
Sure. So I started my career actually as a sales rep for Pfizer Pharmaceutical, many years ago. And so I moved up the corporate ladder. I moved from sales into a department called pricing in corporate headquarters at Pfizer. And so I got a chance to learn a lot about healthcare and pricing and how pharmaceuticals companies price reimbursement for their products. I got a chance to work in a lot of different functions at Pfizer and worked in communications, public affairs, external medical affairs. And then so I worked at Pfizer for about 23 years and I left. I left because I wanted to do something different with my life. And I became a motivational speaker. I became an author. I've written 3 books now. So I became a motivational speaker and an advisor to companies. And so I continued to do that and actually started a startup last year during the pandemic. And so I wear a couple of different hats right now. But basically you can define me as somebody who's curious, who likes to pursue interesting opportunities and to constantly evolve and change and grow. That's kind of who I am. And so what I do is today is I work on my startup. I also work on helping companies change in this new environment, this post-pandemic world that we live in.
Okay, that's really interesting. So how did you make the jump from being in pharma and having, that secure job to becoming, the change maker and the best-selling author that you are now?
Well, it's really hard. When you're working in a company, you're so busy working and trying to do right by your boss, by your manager, and your customers, and your colleagues in the team. So you're working really hard. So, for me, it was this curiosity of, hey, I'm interested in writing a book. So it always starts somewhere within, I think, of this curiosity. I'd read a book somebody wrote and somebody sent me and I said, wow, this is so interesting. I wonder if I can write a book about like this. So my family were Indian immigrants. And so when we came to America, we had nothing. We had $75 in our pocket. But somehow we worked very hard and we got a Dairy Queen franchise, an ice cream store. So we ran that. And so I had all these experiences of running a Dairy Queen, small business, and I was using some of those lessons at my job at Pfizer. And so I decided to write short stories about my experiences of working at the Dairy Queen that helped me in my career at Pfizer. And so what I did was, in the secure job that I had, is, I'd go home in the evenings and I would write. I would take a couple of hours, an hour or so in our apartment in New York at the time, and just write a story that reflected life and what I had learned. And that story came to 2 stories and 3, and eventually it became a whole book. And that's kind of the way I made that transition from being just working in a company to becoming an author. And then, because I could do that. I could think, I could write, on weekends and so on, and on my time off. And so that's kind of the way I made that transition. But leaving was one of the hardest things I had to do. And the reason was because you're like, it's uncertain. Right. Leaving a good job with good pay and benefits and all of that, and then to go to not have that, it's very stressful, and especially when you've been there like I did for 20 some odd years. And so, but what made that jump was that at the time I was working at Pfizer, and my boss, who was a friend, he died. He passed away suddenly of cancer. Took him 3 months, and he passed away. And so it made me realize, that hit me, and it made me realize that life is short. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gave me the courage to say, look, if you really want to become a speaker, a motivational speaker, and inspire people, be an author, you really have to do it full time. And that's kind of what led me to kind of leave and to pursue that. That's the kind of thing I did.
Wow, that's really interesting, and it's wonderful to hear how like you took that step, because I feel like a lot of people would be scared to do that. I mean, even in high school, when you have these things that are like you moving into something uncertain, it's obviously scary. But so
well,
like
it
you
is
mentioned,
very, I mean, I would just say this one last thing is that, on this topic is that it is, change is always difficult. But it's more difficult up here than the truth and reality. Like
right.
you make up these scenarios in your head about how bad things are going to be if this happens, if that happens, and it's like, oh, I'm going to die, I'm going to be on the streets, all these bad things are going to happen, and none of that is really true. It's this overthinking that we do in our head, and
Right.
so when we're faced with uncertainty, and so what we have to learn to do is to, instead of seeing that negative picture, try to paint a positive picture. Positive picture meaning something that you think is likely going to happen, not like something bad and not something amazing, but something kind of decent. But you have to kind of be proactive at creating that picture. And that picture, that visual, will help you move to the next step.
Okay. So we touched on this in the first question when you mentioned how you carry a lot of different titles, but if you only had to pick one, what would you call yourself, or what title would you give yourself?
I would give myself as, a change maker. Somebody who changed his life from working at a Dairy Queen to working at Pfizer to being an author, motivational speaker to working at a startup. And so that's kind of, somebody who constantly embraces change, and somebody who inspires people to change, somebody who does it himself. That's kind of the way I would do it.
That's really nice to hear. So what does a typical day or week look like for you right now? I know you're working on your new company, Embrace the Chaos. Is that what you do full time?
Yeah, so Embrace the Chaos is my, is my company that is the consulting business. And I spend about, a good 60% of my time there doing that. And so I help companies embrace change and to get new models of business. And then the rest, the 40% of my other time, is my startup that I have here called Hoot Myopia Care. Hoot is, it's Hoot Health Inc. basically. And Hoot is basically a startup for doctors, for optometrists, to grow and scale their practice. It's a platform that we've created. My wife is an optometrist, and so she and I started this basically to help other optometrists scale their practice. And it's software, and it's a platform. So it's a online platform. And so that's kind of how I spend my days. 60% I work with clients. I work with small companies and large companies, and then to help them to change and to reinvent themselves, basically, for the new environment. And my day is typically, you wake up early in the morning, I have some rituals, I exercise, I do some meditation, then I drop off my son, my 6-year-old at the camp, and then I have 2 other kids. So I have 3 kids. And so it's a lot of his kids' activities here and there, but pretty much the bulk of my day is advising companies and then working on the startup.
Okay, seems like you're very busy.
Yes.
So in high school or college, did you think that you'd be doing what you're doing now always, or like did you always have it in the back of your mind, or was it not there?
It was. I mean, I had in the back of my mind, I had a goal. I wanted to work in a large company where I got to travel the world. I wanted to be global. I wanted to travel everywhere and meet people from all different places. And I wanted to have, I was a very poor kid, and my dream was to, I'll have a house in every country one day, and that dream did become reality, except for one thing. I did get a chance to work in a big company where I traveled the world. I have friends now in almost every country. And so the dream came true. I got a chance to work internationally in international business, which is what I really wanted to do in life. But the difference is that instead of a house in every country, I have a friend in every country. And actually that's more powerful and more meaningful to me than anything else, because of these relationships. Because I got a chance to build these relationships, my life is better for it. So yes, I kind of had that goal in my mind of working in international business, and I achieved that goal. But then beyond that, now I'm doing things that I could not have imagined. I could not have imagined being a motivational speaker, when I was in high school. But I did imagine being a motivational speaker when I was working, at Pfizer, and that's kind of compelled me to leave to do that,
Mhm.
And so, yes, I think you have to have some vision. If you're in high school, if you're a high school student, you've got to have some visual of the environment and the current person you want to become, or the kind of environment you want to live in and work in. And then, because if you don't have that, you're going to feel lost. So you have to have some, these vision boards. I'm really a big fan of these vision boards because it
Mhm.
gives you visuals. And if the mind has a visual, then the mind will figure out a way to get there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Yeah, the point about relationships and maintaining them is something that I've learned and heard a lot from the people I've interviewed thus far. Because I think that regardless of your profession and regardless of what you do professionally, even our personal lives, relationships are, kind of the whole, like, our human connection is needs that. So it's really nice to hear that. Um, so your current venture, like you mentioned, Embrace the Chaos, is about helping companies adapt to change. But how do we, high school and college and kids and young adults, embrace the chaos when we like naturally want to mitigate issues or even run from them?
Yeah, I think that you have to accept it. I think,
Mhm.
I think you can't run away from change. And I think people run away from change because it's hard, it's painful, it's stressful. And what I've learned is that the mind is a muscle and it requires tension and resistance to grow. So if you don't have resistance, if you don't have problems, you're never going to grow the muscle in here in the mind. And so that's the kind of difference you have to move is you can't escape reality. You can't escape life. And so you can't escape change. And because eventually it's going to come back. Eventually it's either going to be forced upon you in some way that you don't like. So you might as well embrace it. And so once you accept that change is inevitable and actually it's good for you, right? It's good for you because it forces you to do things differently, right? And so that's kind of the core thing is that it's embracing change is hard, but we have to do what's hard in order to grow, right? You
Right.
have to lift that heavy weight of the mind. And the way you do that is going after new goals, going after challenges, going after things that you believe in. And once you do that, you're going to encounter problems. And if you run away from the problems, you're never going to grow. You're never going to learn. And really, failure and resistance and obstacles are the only way forward. And the reason is because it forces us to get creative. When you have a challenge that you have to do, you're against the wall or something, it's going to force you to think differently, to find people and resources, that are going to come to you to help you and also unleash really greatness and power within you to actually try to overcome those obstacles. And
Mhm.
that's why when you do, you're going to be very, very successful. This most successful people discipline themselves to take challenges head on. And the reason they do that is because they've forced themselves out of their comfort zone so that they can really figure out problems, get creative, get innovative, and then eventually go through that obstacle to succeed. So really, mind is a muscle. Again, remember, mind is a muscle and it requires tension and resistance to grow. If there's no tension and resistance, you're never going to grow.
Okay, that's a really good piece of advice. Be sure to remember that. So if you had to do it all over again in terms of your career, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I would take risks. I would take more risk earlier in life. I would,
Okay.
that's the only thing I would do differently is to take more risk because, there's this fear of risk, of failure that holds
Mhm.
most of us back. And that fear of failure is actually the thing that keeps you away from success. You must fail in order to succeed. And so the earlier and the sooner you can fail, the faster your success will be. And so that's kind of my only thing is if you have time on your side, you can recoup the failures in that investment. So that's my only kind of looking back. The only one thing I would change is do things faster, take more risk, and take chances more.
Okay. Yeah, one of my principals in middle school, he always used to say, do one thing every day that scares you. And that's kind of the similar sentiment to, take risks and do something that's out of your comfort zone because,
Yes.
it helps you grow. So from your unique perspective, what are the most exciting and emerging fields or industries? Through my interviews, I've heard a lot about AI and big data, public health, but what do you think?
Well, I think anything that is in the field of technology and healthcare is very important. Healthcare is a very difficult, complex system in America and the world, and we've seen that play out with the pandemic. And so I think also technology is a great opportunity to help improve, using technology to improve healthcare, I think is the way to go. I think it's, I think AI, certainly all these things are important, but if you can impact human beings, human health with the use of technology, there's a great opportunity in the future for you. And so to me, it's about understanding healthcare, understanding not just medicine, but just understanding healthcare broadly, right? And then using technology to help improve that. And that's kind of what we're doing at Hoot. Hoot Health is really a medical technology mix that helps, parents and patients, better off. And so that's kind of the way I would look at it is, and the reason is because, when you go to a doctor's office today, you don't see much technology, and there's so much technology that could be utilized to help improve health outcomes, whether it's, telehealth, whether it's apps on your phone for habits and for shifting behaviors. There's so much, that's a big field. And I think that's kind of the way I look at the future is to healthcare. If healthcare technology is technology combined with healthcare, it can be a very powerful combination.
That sounds really interesting. So just to close off our interview today, what advice would you have for high school or college students who are trying to figure out what they want to do in college and post-college?
I think don't overthink. Don't overthink. Okay, my daughter's also, in high school and about to go to college soon. And she's like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. There's so many things to choose from. And I always say, look, don't overthink it. Focus, number one, don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it, because the major you choose is not going to be the major or the field of study you're probably going to end up with. Okay.
Right.
So don't overthink it. Second is be curious about something. Focus on where your curiosity is. Like what are you curious about? Are you curious about food science? Are you curious about health? Are you curious about technology? And then what area within that are you curious about? So focus on your curiosity. And then the third thing I would say is do something really hard. Okay, choose a field that's really hard. And the reason you choose that field is because when you graduate, there's going to be less people in it. There's going to be less competition, because most people choose things that are easy. And so if you choose something that's hard and you do it and you achieve it and you get that degree, you're going to be very few of those people that have that. And therefore, the chances of you getting hired and getting jobs and opportunities is going to increase dramatically. There's not a lot of, let's say, for example, chemical engineers out there. Okay, they might be needed because of climate change and all these things that are going on in the world. And so but it's a really hard degree, a really hard education. But if you do that, and when you finish, there's going to be this barrier to entry for you in the marketplace that others are not going to be able to get into. Right. So I would say is don't overthink it. Be curious about something, about solving a problem, right? Solve some sort of problem. And the third is do something really hard, because there's going to be less competition for you. So those are my 3 pieces of advice for people going into college.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that third piece is really interesting. I don't think I've really heard someone take that stance before, but it makes a lot of sense, and I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for meeting with me today and helping other students like myself learn about different professions and hear a little bit about your journey as well. Yeah, I definitely found it very helpful, and I'm sure others will as well.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Of course.